6 months. That's all it takes. Not a year, not a decade. Just 6 months of consistent, deliberate attention to your blood sugar, and the body you're living in today can feel like an entirely different place to be. If you've been told you have prediabetes, or if your A1C has been creeping up, or if you simply want to understand what's actually possible when someone like you commits to this video is going to walk you through exactly what happens, month by month, system by system, from the very first week, all the way to that 6-month doctor's visit where everything changes. And I want to be honest with you right now. This isn't a video about miracle cures. It isn't about some secret pill or an exotic supplement nobody's heard of. What I'm going to share with you is a realistic, evidence-based timeline, the kind of transformation that researchers have actually documented in adults over 60 who committed to bringing their glucose under control. The kind of transformation that most doctors don't have time to walk you through in a 15-minute appointment. Here's something I want you to hold on to until the very end of this video. Something that surprises almost everyone who hears it. The first organ to visibly respond when you stabilize your blood sugar isn't your heart, and it isn't your pancreas. It's one you'd never think to connect to glucose at all. I'm going to tell you what it is and why, but only after I've given you the full picture, because context is everything. I've spent months reviewing clinical trials, longitudinal studies, and patient outcome data from research centers across the United States and Europe. I've read the work coming out of the American Diabetes Association, the National Institute on Aging, and independent academic hospitals. What I'm sharing today is a synthesis of that research, built specifically for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. Because your physiology is not the same as a 40-year-old's, and the generic advice you find online was not written with you in mind. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Let's start at the very beginning. Month 1 is what researchers call the adaptation phase, and it is the hardest part of the entire journey. Not because you're failing, but because your body is catching up. When you first begin reducing refined carbohydrates, moderating portion sizes, and replacing certain habits with others, your cells go through a period of recalibration. For decades, your body has been running on whatever glucose it got whenever it got it, in whatever quantities arrived. Changing that pattern, even gently, even gradually, triggers a cascade of biochemical adjustments that can feel, in the first 2 to 3 weeks, like fatigue, mild headaches, or a general sense of being off. This is not the change hurting you. This is your metabolism learning to work differently. Here is what is actually happening at the cellular level during month 1. Your insulin receptors, the tiny docking stations on the surface of your cells that allow glucose to enter, begin to upregulate. When blood sugar has been chronically high, these receptors become desensitized, which is the mechanism behind insulin resistance. But when you consistently reduce the glucose flood, the receptors start to become responsive again. It's like a doorbell that's been ringing non-stop for years. Once it finally stops, the person inside starts listening again. During this first month, most people who commit to dietary changes see a reduction of roughly 1 to 2 kilograms in body weight. In pounds, that's about 2 to 4 pounds. It doesn't sound like much, and if you've been on crash diets before, you might be tempted to dismiss it. But this weight loss is qualitatively different from what happens on a starvation diet. It's not coming primarily from muscle. It's coming from water that was being held in your tissues by the high insulin environment, and from early reductions in visceral fat, the metabolically active fat stored around your abdominal organs that directly interferes with insulin signaling. Losing even a small amount of visceral fat in month 1 creates a measurable reduction in inflammatory markers in the bloodstream, and that is where everything else begins. By the end of month 1, most people also notice something they didn't expect. Their hunger patterns have changed. The violent mid-afternoon crash, that urgent, almost panicked need for something sweet or starchy around 3 in the afternoon, begins to soften. It doesn't disappear yet, but it becomes manageable. This is because the wild peaks and valleys in blood glucose that drive intense cravings are starting to even out. When glucose stops spiking to 180 or 200 after meals and dropping sharply an hour later, your brain stops sending emergency hunger signals. Your appetite begins to feel like something you're in charge of, rather than something that's in charge of you. Month 2 is where most people have their first real moment of surprise. And it tends to come not from a number on a scale or a blood test. It comes from energy. By week 6 or 7, a significant portion of people who have successfully reduced their post-meal glucose spikes report something that sounds almost too simple. They feel better in the afternoon. They don't need a nap. They can get through a trip to the grocery store without feeling drained afterward. They wake up in the morning, and the first hour doesn't feel like wading through fog. These aren't dramatic proclamations. They're quiet, private realizations that something has shifted. The science behind this is elegant. When blood sugar is chronically elevated, the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside each of your cells, become impaired. High glucose generates oxidative stress, which damages mitochondrial membranes and reduces their ability to produce ATP, the currency of cellular energy. As blood sugar stabilizes, oxidative stress decreases, mitochondrial function improves, and cells throughout your body, including neurons in your brain, begin generating energy more efficiently. You are not imagining this improvement in vitality. You are experiencing it at a molecular level. Month 2 is also when many people notice improvements in sleep. This is where the systemic connections become remarkable. High blood glucose at night disrupts the normal architecture of sleep by interfering with the release of growth hormone, which peaks during deep sleep stages, and by elevating cortisol, the stress hormone, in the early morning hours. When glucose is better controlled in the evening, particularly when the last meal of the day is smaller, earlier, and lower in rapidly digestible carbohydrates, the cortisol spike that drags people awake at 4 in the morning begins to moderate. Sleep becomes deeper. Mornings feel less brutal. Month 3 is the month of the number. For those of you who've had an HbA1c test, the blood test that reflects your average blood glucose over the previous 3 months, month 3 is when you first begin to see that number move. HbA1c, or glycated hemoglobin, measures what percentage of your red blood cells have glucose permanently attached to them. A healthy level is below 5.7%. Prediabetes sits between 5.7 and 6.4. Type 2 diabetes is diagnosed at 6.5 and above. For many seniors who've been in the pre-diabetic or early diabetic range, 3 months of consistent glucose management can produce a reduction of 0.3 to 0.8 percentage points in HbA1c. That may sound small, but in clinical terms, even a 0.5 point reduction is associated with meaningfully lower risk of cardiovascular events, kidney decline, and neuropathic damage. Here is what makes month 3 particularly important for people over 60. By this point, the body has fully adjusted to the new nutritional pattern. The adaptation fatigue of month 1 is gone. The pleasant surprise of month 2 has become the new normal, and the psychological relationship with food has often undergone a quiet revolution. People stop thinking about what they're giving up and start thinking about what they're building. That shift in mental frame is not cosmetic. Research consistently shows that intrinsic motivation, wanting to eat well because of how it makes you feel, rather than fear of a diagnosis, is the single strongest predictor of long-term adherence. Month 3 is often when that motivation takes root. Month 3 is also, in many cases, the first time a physician looks at lab results and says something they don't say very often. Keep doing what you're doing. Months 4 and 5 represent the consolidation phase, and this is where the transformation becomes something deeper than a health intervention. It becomes a life pattern. By now, the habits that felt effortful in month 1 have become largely automatic. You no longer have to think carefully about every meal. You've developed an intuitive sense of which foods work well for your body and which ones send your energy crashing 2 hours later. The cognitive load of managing glucose has decreased substantially, and this matters enormously for older adults whose bandwidth for health management is not unlimited. During months 4 and 5, the benefits extend in directions that many people don't anticipate. Let's start with the skin. This is the organ I mentioned at the beginning. The first visible responder. The one nobody expects. When blood glucose is chronically high, a process called glycation damages collagen fibers throughout the body, including in the skin. Glycation makes collagen stiff, brittle, and prone to breakdown, which accelerates the visible signs of aging and impairs the skin's ability to heal. As glucose normalizes, glycation rates decrease, collagen remains more supple, and many people notice that their skin looks clearer, that wounds heal faster, and that the dullness they had attributed to just getting older begins to lift. This is not vanity. The condition of your skin is a visible readout of what is happening inside your blood vessels, your connective tissue, and your immune system. When the skin improves, the underlying biology that governs it has improved too. Also during months 4 and 5, mood. This is another area where the connection to glucose is underappreciated and under-discussed. The brain is the most glucose-hungry organ in the body, consuming roughly 20% of your total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. When glucose is unstable, spiking and crashing throughout the day, the brain experiences a kind of metabolic turbulence. This turbulence has measurable effects on neurotransmitter production, particularly serotonin and dopamine, both of which regulate mood, motivation, and emotional resilience. As glucose stabilizes, many people in their 60s and 70s report that they feel more emotionally even, less irritable, less prone to that grey, low-grade sadness that can creep in during the afternoon, more patient with the people they love. And then there is libido, a subject that older adults are rarely given space to discuss openly, but which is deeply connected to metabolic health. Testosterone, in both men and women, is suppressed by chronically high insulin levels. As insulin sensitivity improves and blood glucose stabilizes, many people experience a gradual return of sexual interest and energy that they had assumed was simply an irreversible consequence of aging. It is not always irreversible. It is sometimes reversible, and it is reversible through exactly the mechanisms this video describes. Vision is another system that responds. The tiny blood vessels that supply the retina are among the first in the body to be damaged by high glucose. This is why diabetic retinopathy is one of the leading causes of blindness in older adults. Sustained glucose reduction doesn't reverse existing vascular damage, but it does slow and in some cases halt the progression, preserving the vision you have and protecting what remains. Month 6 is the appointment. For many people, it is the first doctor's visit in years where they walk in feeling proud rather than anxious. By the 6-month mark, all of the changes we've discussed, the weight reduction, the improved insulin sensitivity, the lower HbA1c, the better sleep, the improved mood, the skin changes have had time to compound into something measurable. Blood pressure, in many cases, has dropped. Triglycerides, blood fats that are intimately connected to carbohydrate metabolism, have often improved significantly. Kidney function markers, which deteriorate over time in the presence of elevated blood sugar, may have stabilized or improved. Inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, which predict cardiovascular risk, have frequently decreased. The physician looking at these results is seeing the body's own healing capacity, finally given the conditions it needs to operate. And the person sitting across from that physician is someone who has learned, through 6 months of lived experience, that they have more agency over their own biology than they were ever told. That is the real transformation of the 6-month journey. Not just the numbers, not just the way your clothes fit, or the way your afternoons feel. It is the knowledge, deep and personal and earned, that your body responds to how you treat it. That it is not simply a machine running down, that the trajectory is not fixed. People often ask what makes the difference between those who succeed over 6 months and those who don't. The answer, based on the research, is not willpower. It is not discipline in the punishing sense of the word. It is information. People who understand exactly what is happening in their bodies, why a meal affects their glucose the way it does, what the biology of insulin resistance actually looks like, how to read their own physical signals, are dramatically more likely to sustain the changes that produce these results. Knowledge is the most powerful metabolic tool available to you. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time. And leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox, and inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.